we are going to be looking at performing answer checks and why it is important that you always perform answer checks, especially in your exams. This lesson applies to all levels because throughout functional skills you're quite often asked to perform answer checks to gain an extra mark on your question, and we're going to be going through how exactly you can show the working out for that. It's really important that you do this, and quite often a lot of marks are missed through not doing this. So as I mentioned before, in your exam there may be a question where you're specifically asked to perform an answer check in order to gain marks, and also you should do this on all questions for all your answers, even when you're not specifically asked to, as you are able to avoid an awful lot of silly mistakes that we see throughout student work. Ultimately, making enough of these silly mistakes will make the difference between you either passing or failing your exam. So some of the common silly mistakes that we have seen students make in the formative assessments from last term and from just after Christmas, a lot of people aren't actually doing what the question is asking. So you need to perform an answer check to make sure that the question is asking what you are working out. No matter how well you think that you've read a question, this quite often happens. Also, you might also have shown excellent working out, but you haven't stated the conclusion of the question at the end of your answer. So, for example, you might be asked to calculate distance between 2 points and work out which shop is closer. Often people do the maths for this and they actually get the maths right and calculate the distance correctly, but then at the end of the question they don't actually state which shop is closer, so you would lose marks for that. Another one is when you're asked to, for example, calculate the cost of a mobile phone contract over 12 months, and you're asked which mobile phone deal is the cheapest. Your maths is completely correct and the working out is, but you haven't actually stated which phone contract is the cheaper of the two. So a lot of these mistakes happen particularly on comparison questions. So when we say make sure you're answering the entire question, we don't just mean the calculation side, you actually need to state what your final answer is as well. You can lose 1 or 2 marks for this. So if you do that throughout all of your questions, then it's actually going to add up quite quickly. So other silly mistakes that we've seen that are really, really silly are, have you actually used the right information? Have you extracted the correct information that you need to answer the question from the question itself? So again, the maths you've performed might actually be spot on, but unfortunately, if the numbers that you've begun with are not right, then you will get the wrong answer. So, for example, if a question asks what 384 minus 127 is, we've seen instances where students might actually write down 348 and minus 127 from that. So can you see the really, really silly mistake in that? That would result in an incorrect answer and a loss of marks. So do double check that you are actually writing down the information from the question correctly too. Quite often where in functional skills in particular, where students are asked to perform a reverse calculation to show their working and how they reach their answer, students aren't correctly doing this or maybe aren't fully understanding what is meant when they're being asked to perform an answer check in the exam. The way that you would perform an answer check is to do what is known as a reverse calculation. So this means that whatever you're doing in the question, you perform the opposite operation to the one you've used. So for example, if you are adding, the question is asking you to add something to something else. To perform the reverse calculation, you would subtract that, and the same for times and divide. So to give you an example of what that meant, so to revisit, subtract is the reverse of add. So if you have the question, what is 9 plus 3? And the answer is 12, and you're asked to perform a reverse calculation or an answer check, what you would do here is you would do 12 minus 3 to see that you arrive back at the original number you started at, which is 9. This way we know that our answer is correct because we are ending with the number that we began with. To give you an example using multiply as the reverse of divide, if the question is 16 divided by 4, we know that the answer is 4. To perform a check of this answer, you would perform a reverse calculation. We know, looking at the diagram from the previous slide, just here, that actually Times is the opposite of divide. So to answer check 16 divided by 4, we've reached the answer 4, we would then perform 4 times 4 to get back to our original number of 16. So we know it's correct now because we're back at the point at which we began. So we would like you to complete this exercise to kind of demonstrate that you can answer the questions correctly, and then also perform the calculation check or the reverse calculation on your answer to make sure that you have actually got the right answer. So entry level students, if you attempt the 4 questions on the left hand column of the screen, level 1 and 2 students should attempt both. So all 8 questions. What I would like you to do is that if you are working on a phone, ideally, can you please work this out on paper, take a photo of your notes and then upload it to this page, please. Those of you that are working from a computer and unable to work from a phone, you can type your answers in at the bottom. Please make sure that you number your answers and write out the full sum and the full sum for your reverse calculation.